Yeah, comedy is going really good. We actually I just got included into they have like this I just got voted into this comedy group called the Comedy Junkies Society here in North Texas. So like that's essentially I think that's really exciting to see, and they're talking about putting me on some weekend shows, which that's even better. Like I've been doing open mics now. I let them know like this month because Twitch ended up giving us a big kind of a big goal and incentive to
Oh, the
stream more.
incentives thing.
Yeah, and so it's
Yeah.
like, oh, so I'm Chris. The typically the incentive, like the goal, because they want us to stream 140 something hours.
Mhm.
I was like that would Chris would knock that out of the park with, especially with
Yeah.
me and my Friday streams, but he's actually out for the end of this month for his 10-year anniversary
Oh, so you're
celebration for his
covering?
wife. Well, no, like the goal is like we're just going to try to get 140 hours in 3 weeks. So it's like, all right. So I said, like, you know what? I just won't go do my open mic nights, and I'll do my Fridays, and then so I did a Monday and a Tuesday stream. So that's what's been going on in the world of like MMO streaming.
But
Out,
like my thing is, how has the audience been reacting? Because like my
oh, dude,
understanding of the
so
whole
good.
comedy thing, it's always about the audience. Like if the
Oh
audience is
yeah.
not working for you, like that doesn't work.
There's been a couple times where I've specifically gone in to try and bomb with the audience, and that's because I'm just trying to get a comfort level for that. But
Yeah.
at the joke, and I end up always kind of leaning into, especially if the audience isn't cluing into it, is like, you know what's really great? I got 5 kids. It's so freaking loud in my house. I really appreciate y'all being quiet right now.
That's a good one.
It's like I'm not gonna lie, guys. Like we could sit here and
I appreciate the silence. Let's
just
just
like,
all
oh
talk
my
a little
god,
bit.
this is just so beautiful. Like I can hear myself think, this is just the perfect time. And so no, the audiences have been fantastic. In fact, people keep asking me like, are you going to start posting your comedy online? I'm very hesitant to do it.
Time for that like 54th channel Brian's
Well,
ginger comedy.
it, I would do I actually say people like you want comedy, it's like come to hang out on the podcast, like that's where like I'll lean in and more conversational and just kind of be a little bit more goofy, and that's kind of a taste of what you would get. But like in stand up, the audience is the only person who knows. And I was listening, I don't know if you kind of follow, so like because I've always really been in like enjoyed different comedians, and I was listening to it was Louis C.K. talk about obviously him and like his cancellation, etc. But he's
Yeah.
like, he was sitting here commenting on just how like he understands it, but how corrupted the incentive structure is, so that like he'll put like if he puts out his comedy online, somebody who wasn't in the audience will put out a review of it for clicks. So their incentive is to make sure that it's as sensationalized and dramatic one way or the
Clickbait
other.
culture. Yeah.
Right, but it's that incentive structure even in articles, so people who might not even been in there, he's like, I don't care about any of that, I don't read any of that, I don't worry, I don't that's why I don't post my stuff online for any of that, because none of it matters. The only thing that actually matters is the people in the room. If I say something, I get real-time feedback or real-time review of that joke, and I can either then push into it, into the discomfort, or it depends on how that kind of feels and plays out. And I was like, that's actually one of the like things that's so true. And so when it comes down to it, people who've part of this community have come out to my shows, and they said they had a really good time. So I don't know if they're blowing smoke or anything like that, but the laughs are real, because not everybody in that audience knows me, and so it's been truly
That's good.
it's been truly wonderful, man.
I'm happy for you because I know that
Yeah,
that's something that you wanted to do, and it's like I'm always happy to see people be able to
yeah.
pursue the projects that they're passionate about.
Getting over that hurdle, like it's just like same thing when I would tell people like with content creation, like how do you be a YouTuber? Like
Yeah,
post,
you hit record.
you hit record, and then you hit
You hit
publish,
record and you
and then you
upload.
do it again and do it again. And if you don't like it, you'll know really soon. My fear is that somebody who's like, oh, I always thought I'd enjoy that, and then they never go and try it, because it's like if you can filter out and find out whether you like it or not, then that's going to be a plus. We hide in the logo.
I mean, look, I'm not officially sponsored by them, so it's like, come on, I have a good relationship with them, but you know, I don't get paid to flash PlayStation logos. If you want to pay me for it,
I'll
I'm
flash
down for
this.
it.
I do have a link for the secret. I finally, after like 6 years of like having this, like I actually just got a new chair that I paid for.
Yeah.
Like it's like they're not sending me merchandise, but I was like, hey, listen, I really like your chairs, and your chairs featured in every video I make. Is there like an
Pay me
affiliate
money.
link? Is there an affiliate link that
Pay
I
me
can
money
have?
or something.
You know, and they're like, yeah. So I have like you can use the command share
But
and find the link.
the worst part is like if I had like let's say PlayStation would sponsor me, I can't even like, hey guys, go out and buy a PlayStation. No, you can't.
Yeah.
And they're getting more expensive. It's hard, man.
Oh yeah.
PlayStation's got it hard.
I've been like I actually filmed a members only video like before this that I'll post up after this, and I'm debating. I haven't decided yet if I want to or not, because I've actually went and applied for some more contracts and things like that. But like my 14 subscription expired yesterday, so I actually moved my 14 stream from yesterday to Monday because I was like, I don't get paid till Friday. Like, all right, like that's just the world I live in right now. Like the summer has been tight.
Day to
It's been
day.
tight. Well,
Holy
yeah,
crap.
it's been tight. Like it's, you know, so that's the nature of and the risk of being an independent software
Yeah.
engineer. And all of it and most of it is just like I've got these contracts all up that have been put on pause due to like unknown, you know, circumstances with the economy.
Yeah,
You know, and
the economy is like going to complete hell and back. Like,
well,
it's
some
gonna
in
be
some
really
areas, like
tough.
within anything, like some areas are like, oh, this is up, and then, you know, like right now, and so a lot of people are just like, we don't know what's, you know, like, and so this isn't a critical, if it isn't a critical infrastructure project, like if you
It's
follow
not getting approved.
Cole just got laid off from his like programming job, so it's like in you know, like that's the nature of life, and so, you know, we've
Yeah.
just been, well, money's tight, like that's the life, and so I put out a kind of a thank you video, but then I am debating on, because I you know, debating on kind of like then opening up, be like, hey guys, you know, I got the $1 membership, you know, like like right now, like the channel brings in this much. If I can get it to this much, then I can, you know, I can do this, or you know, whatnot. So
It's
I
always
don't feel
hard to
comfortable
go
with
down.
it.
Yeah, it's always hard to like. That's one of the reasons why I've had a Patreon for a while, like a
Yeah.
long time ago. But then I was like contracted to work on TGN, and I was like, the moment I'm making good money while I'm working for TGN, I don't need a Patreon, so I canceled it and I never started again because after that I was able to become a little bit more successful than I was before. And it's like I'm making ends meet. So I'm like, well, if I'm making ends meet, what right do I have to ask more money from people? Right? It doesn't feel good. It's weird. So yeah, I can relate to the whole thing about, hey guys, join and membership this and that. Yeah, I get it. I get the thing.
Like, because it's like I mean, you don't have to like break down numbers, but it was really interesting is that over the summer my ad revenue on the channel was so abysmal that the membership here made up for half of the revenue, and that was at 600. So I was bringing in $300 of ads, $300 to just people who are just actively like supporting via the membership, and I was like, that feels, I mean, it feels so good to have, like, it felt loved, because I was like, why, like, but I was like, why are ads down? And that's YouTube just futzing up, because then August hits and it go like ad revenue finally like steps itself up, and I made $1,000 here on this channel, and I was like, that's great. It's definitely not enough, and I don't know if anybody out there's got kids, and you know, like for some people $1,000 would be great, but like for me, like that literally covers, like, because we have to pay for health insurance out of pocket, like that is my health insurance premium.
The health situation in America is like wild.
What health situation? It's a health crisis, dude. like it's not a situation. Sounds like, you know, we got a situation here. Let's get into the situation room. Like the thing's on fire, dude.
I'm dealing with some health situations myself. I mean, we do have an insurance, but like if I can only imagine, like if I was in America, the amount of tests that I've been done, I'd be like completely financially ruined. Whereas the way that I've been doing, it's like a couple of $100 max, and it's like, yeah, I've done all these exams and whatnot, and it's okay.
It's a real interesting, complex, issue within our health, because I came up in healthcare as a programmer, and then I still do and work within it, you know, in some certain contracts, and it's that there is the value of it is that we as Americans are fronting so much of it, because being that you can profit from it means there's people investing. So we're developing new technologies, new drugs, new all of these things, right? So I had my gallbladder out, which I have a little scar for that. But you go back like 30 or 40 years and you have like this, it was this massive big surgery. So like there is the sense that like we are kind of funding this, but then we don't necessarily get to benefit from any of the residuals and any of the patents and any of this. So the government does do grants and all these things, but then these companies, so I have no problem with a company making money, but I do think that anybody who comes into the, like, whenever I see a politician come and say, here's how we're going to fix the healthcare system, I try not to spit take all over whatever the hell I'm looking at. Cause I'm like, that guy literally just said like things that like, yeah, this is impossible.
Sure.
Like, sure, buddy.
Sure
yeah.
thing.
Yeah. You clearly understand. Like you go talk to people in the thick of it. And it's like, there are so many, like, it's interesting because there's economies that are built up to prop up a broken system. And we see this happen in content creation. We see this happen in all these things that you kind of have this thing that gets set, and then you have things that get built around it. And then those things that get built around it don't want the thing to change, because that means then they and their money have to change. So then they end up propping up. You end up seeing this prop up of a bad, like, oh, if we could change this core, like if we could separate insurance from your job. And the reason that came into play in America was because they actually had laws that capped how much a job could pay you. So companies had to find ways to entice you to come to work for them. So then they started bundling all these benefits. And now it's like we have a culture that's like, you get this insurance through your work, which gives the job a lot of power.
Yeah,
it gives your it
which makes being independent that much harder. Yeah,
makes being independent. I mean, I can't go and get a rate that Amazon can get, right? They can negotiate. Oh, hell, they're building their own insurance program, but it's like, and so like it also keeps keeps people kind of like, well, I guess I just gotta stick around this job and not really kind of maybe do something that might be better
pursue their dreams, which is how you eventually also end up with a lot of people that are like upset over not being able to pursue their dreams, and then they go to YouTube and it's like, you have it easy.
Oh yeah. It's like, anyway,
so it's not a real job.
Yeah, Casual Nerd brings up a really cool point. I guess this would be actually a really fun way to kind of kick off the show itself, because we're just kind of talking for the pre-show. You ready to get this candle lit, since we talked for 12 minutes about the problems within healthcare and comedy, guys? You never know what you're getting on this podcast. All right, guys, we're going to kick this off and let's get the show started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Epic Loot Radio podcast. This is Brian as your host, and this is a special episode. We have Rory back on the show. Being a member, as we were doing the show originally back in the day, as kind of a 4-man or 3-man roundtable, it has now evolved to a one-on-one, and this happens to be episode 50, a very special milestone. So I'm really glad that we were able to get you back on. And
thank you for having me.
Before we jump in, I see a great comment, great question from chat that I think would be a really good kind of opening starting point for the show itself. But for those who are watching, listening, wherever podcasts are found, blah, 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 tell people about yourself, your content, Monster Hunter or Final Fantasy and MMOs. Like, you're a passionate gamer, been doing this stuff full time. Introduce yourself for those who don't know you, and then we're going to jump in.
So I am Rurikhan. I make videos about Monster Hunter and Dark Souls on like my main channel. That's my main content. And then I also have a lot of passion for the MMO genre, which is why I made a second channel where I'm now putting most of my MMO content there, because I played World of Warcraft for a significant amount of years, Ultima Online, some old school MMOs, and then some more modern stuff as well. So, I kind of run the gamut with a lot of video games. If it's fun and I find it entertaining, I tend to play it and talk about it.
Absolutely, dude. And your content and your energy is phenomenal. I still like one of the best moments, I think, best reaction moment that I've seen of you, and there's plenty, but the thing that has resonated with me was your Paladin Endwalker reaction when you see those swords just popping off.
Blade works.
It just boom, 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 and you're just like, yes. So
That's
are
what
you?
that's what me and my static we call the blade works. It's like fireworks, but with blades. Blade works.
Absolutely. Are you still a paladin main, or have you changed up
I've
any of
been
your 14 approach?
it's been hard, man, because like Paladin has not necessarily gotten, even though we got the blade works, we haven't gotten as much love in terms of performance when compared to other classes. It is a lot easier to just play warrior. Just get on a warrior. It's like, aha, fell cleave, go brrr, and it's just like all the damage, all the healing, all the everything. It's much harder to work with a paladin. So
Watching warriors solo like dungeon bosses was just like,
yeah,
yeah, this job is a healer
I can
now.
do that with a paladin as well. It's just not as easy.
It's not as easy. It's doable, but it's definitely a little bit slower.
So it's
So
like
yeah.
the previous Savage tier, I started as a paladin and then halfway through I changed to warrior to make it easy on the whole group because
Mhm.
landing wings in Savage content on a controller is a pain. Because especially like if your controller has just a little bit of snapback, there were
Yeah.
so many times where I'd move forward, let go of the stick, my character would 180 and fire off the wings in the wrong direction, and everybody would make fun of me. I was
Yeah.
like, well, fine, now I have to shake it off and I don't have to worry about that anymore. But this year I'm trying out the Paladin again, and I've been doing some experiments with it with different rotations and whatnot. It's been a lot of fun. So yeah, I always would consider myself a Paladin main on 14.
All right. So, guys, these are filmed live, but you can always subscribe to the MP3 for free wherever podcasts are found. Also, a great way of supporting the show is hitting that like button and then join us when we're live to ask real questions. Like the first one we're going to jump into, if Casual Nerd Jason says, "Good morning. What do we need, obviously, is a Monster Hunter MMO. Imagine the world bosses. Do we need a Monster Hunter MMORPG? What saith you?" My
There's
good
a lot
sir.
of people who will agree with that. I personally don't. And there's already been, I think, two Monster Hunter MMOs. There was Monster Hunter Frontier, which lasted for a whole bunch of seasons, like a lot of years. I think it was almost like a decade or something. I don't know. I never played it. And there was Monster Hunter Online, which was only in the Chinese market and like some other Asian markets. So there's already been two Monster Hunter MMOs. And I don't know what the level of success were. I know that a lot of people were really into Frontier for sure. I don't know about Monster Hunter Online, but the reason I don't think there should be one is because what I appreciate in Monster Hunter is the level of innovation that they introduced to the game in between every iteration of the game. So, for instance, you go from 3 Ultimate to 4 Ultimate, and they add the ability for you to mount monsters, which basically means you get on the monster, start stabbing it, and doing crazy things, right? In World, they improved on that functionality. In Rise, they took it too far, where you actually get to ride them around like they're an actual mount, and you use them to beat on other monsters. I think that was maybe a little bit too far. But the interesting thing is, due to the fact that they're always making new games, they always innovate on some aspect, which if you look at MMOs, they don't get to innovate nearly as much as what they've innovated with Monster Hunter over the years, because they're just like, okay, the old game is done. Now we make a new game. Right. One of the big problems of 14, for instance, is the fact that they're always complaining about, oh, spaghetti code, right? There's all these problems with the thing that we've built. And because of that, we can't innovate on some things. Without that limitation, I feel like the game just feels way better every other year. And as a content creator, it's a lot harder to cover games like that because like the game ends, people stop watching the content, they move on, and then try to get them back when the next game rolls around is a pain in the ass. But as a gamer, it feels better to see that innovation and enjoy it that way. But that's my opinion. I know there's a lot of people that disagree with me.
Yeah, the best so far, the most time that I spent and what would make me kind of lean into the interest in a Monster Hunter MMO was Monster Hunter World, minus the difficulty of grouping together for a party. That's like, it's so interesting. I think it's a cultural thing though, because Final Fantasy 15 had a multiplayer component that after playing World and then playing 15, I was like, oh my gosh,
It was almost the same thing.
that's almost the same thing. And I found it to be incredibly annoying and inconvenient. But then that's where I go, oh, this has to be a cultural thing, that if this is how Japanese culture thinks that this is how groups should be formed, then like clearly, like I would love for them to kind of like get in onto the drop in, drop out multiplayer or a persistent online world itself.
So
Go ahead.
Let me just give you like a little bit of background as to why Monster Hunter multiplayer works the way that it does. So when Monster Hunter really took off was when they made, at least in my opinion, some people might have different opinions on that, but like I think most people agree that when Monster Hunter really took off was when they made Freedom Unite for the PlayStation Portable. And the reasoning why it took off is because, like, say I would go over, if I was to live near you, I'd go over to your house with my PlayStation, you'd have your PlayStation, and boom, instant multiplayer, the two of us are playing. Now, in the West, this is not something nearly as popular, but say you're in Japan, which is where the game is developed, right? And people were playing Monster Hunter on their commutes to work in the trains and all of this. And they're basically doing ad hoc on their 3DSs or their PSPs, whatever. And, on a train ride, someone would get in like 2 or 3 hunts with complete strangers. Like they would straight up set up a lobby in a train with complete strangers. People would join your quest. You might not even realize who was the person that was playing with you, right? But that was the phenomenon. And that is why it is kind of like more intended as almost a local multiplayer thing where you get together with a couple of friends and you go hunting and then you leave. And that's why it's not really as built for random interaction with random people on the internet. It's more so built for a group of friends.
Yeah. I can totally see that. I think though what I would be drawn into would be that persistence and investment.
Yeah.
That would be, that game's a service. And that's just where it's, for me, always kind of funny when people complain about that business model. And I'm like, I'm specifically looking for that as what I'm excited about and what drives me into it. And so it's like I enjoyed my time with Monster Hunter World, but I never really could get into Rise. I downloaded it on the Switch, played it for a little bit, and then it just sat there. And most like my Switch games tend to anyway. And now that it's on PC, it's like, have you seen any kind of bump, because there is no cross save between PC and Switch, so you're essentially starting over. Was that a good thing?
There's definitely a bump because there's a lot of people that like came from World and they don't have a Switch because either they don't care for the console or whatever. They just mostly like playing either on PC or like on a regular home console, right? And those people fundamentally did not have access to the game until Rise eventually came out on PC. There was a bump there, but it was nothing like as massive as World was. World was and still is like the most successful Capcom game ever. The most successful individual Capcom game ever.
Was releasing Rise on Switch like a year prior to PC a good thing or a bad thing overall?
To me, I always look at it as a bad thing personally. I don't know if it was good for them financially. Maybe Nintendo gave them money or something like that. I don't know what the deals were there, but like I always see it as a bad thing because we've talked about this previously. I would like every game on every single platform. That's just the way that I prefer. I know there's always these console wars. People are like, oh no, we have God of War on Sony and we have like Halo and Gears on Xbox. And I'm like, wouldn't it be cooler if like I was on my PlayStation playing with Brian on his PC and playing with somebody else on their Xbox and we're all playing together? And there's like maybe 2 or 3 games that do that, which what was that game? Outriders did that, if I remember correctly. Even Stadia and stuff. Yeah.
And they've struggled a little bit with that, namely right out of the gate. But I haven't actually had a chance to go back and sit down and play the new expansion. But that's something that I think is important because the easier that you make that, I think that makes it a requirement, for other games. So if somebody said, "Hey, Brian, we're all playing Final Fantasy or Destiny," and it's like, "Hey, I need you to go buy a PlayStation so we can play this new multiplayer game."
Yeah,
and I'm like, it's like that's just not how the world is going to work anymore. Like, it's like, okay, if I could find one, okay, cool. Or like it's weird because it's like, imagine making a friend and then realizing, oh wait, you like Xbox? Oh, I like PlayStation.
We have a problem.
We have a problem. I thought this was going to be a good friendship, but now I'm not so sure.
See, the one of the things that actually got a good friend of mine into 14, maybe even a little bit too into 14, it was his first MMO. I kind of ruined his life. We haven't even done our podcast. It's my other podcast that I used to do with him. We haven't been able to do it because he's been so addicted to 14. Like I think he's level 90 everything already. Like he surpassed me in almost every way. He's already done an ultimate. And I'm like, bro, what are you doing? He's just like, and the reason he was able to get into it is because he was able to play on PlayStation. Because he didn't actually have like an easy way to play it on PC and whatnot. And I was like, oh yeah, I can play on PlayStation. This cross-play and it's not a problem. And it was like a super easy thing for him to eventually get into it because I was able to help him on the PC. I was also able to play with him on PlayStation when I was home. And it was like, there's no friction. It's just like, yeah, it just works. You can play on PC, you can play on PlayStation 5 or PlayStation 4, whatever. And right now, he actually plays with his daughter. She plays on PlayStation. He plays on PC. And again, it's just like something that's super convenient to have that functionality of crossplay.
So on a question in this regards, what do you see right now as one of the biggest weaknesses within Final Fantasy 14?
One of the biggest weaknesses of Final Fantasy 14, I don't actually know the proper answer to that because everybody has different reasons why they enjoy MMOs. Some people will say that it's the long story because the long story is going to be the biggest hurdle that a new player needs to overcome in order to get through 14. It's a lot of hours of commitment for someone that might not even end up enjoying the game at the end of the day, which is why it's extremely, like, I would say that's, while that's not its biggest weakness, it's the biggest barrier to entry. The biggest weakness is going to vary from player to player. Like some players will say that, oh, it's the PvP is not quite as robust, even though, again, they're doing strides in that with Crystalline Conflict. That's amazing. I even did 2 matches earlier today. Some people might think that there's not enough content there in the raiding scene, even though they do have robust raids, but it is kind of like few and far between. I think if I had to point something out, it's the content evolution from someone doing like a normal raid and jumping into a savage. Now there's extremes, but I kind of feel like there needs to be a step there, and it's not like a different difficulty. It's maybe a different kind of content, which is one of the reasons why I'm particularly excited about Savage Dungeons. I was going to say the acronym. I'm not sure if I'm going to say the
Criterion, right?
Oh, it's Criterion, but I'm talking about the acronym of the thing because it's another Sildy something.
Oh yeah, Subterranean or whatever. Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm really excited about that content because I'm hoping it can scratch the itch that I have for Mythic Plus, which is, the scaling dungeons of World of Warcraft
without being required. Like that's the biggest weakness in the Mythic Plus system is people feel like, oh, you don't like Mythic Dungeons, but it's required if you want to do the thing that you want to do. My hope is that it's Mythic without being. Well, that's the argument that I've heard from WoW players and stuff. I can't speak to it personally because that's just not. I'm not a WoW guy, So when it comes down to it, I was like, okay, but yeah, I'm really excited. So what would be then as the kids continue to stream?
Yeah, I can hear them.
Yeah. Hey, Julie, I'm going to make a podcast. I'm 9:00. Let's send the kids upstairs right as we start recording. On that note, though, what would you say is the greatest strength that Final Fantasy 14 possesses?
The greatest strength that it possesses is its ability to capture a player through the story and then keeping them engaged through the content, essentially, which really is something that has gripped me in more ways than I initially predicted, because I thought that, once I was done with the story, I'd be like, okay, I'm done. But the story kind of keeps you coming back. It keeps you attached to the characters. And at the same time, they then add on top of that story with the raid stories, with even the trial stories. Like all of that story and the lore keeps players engaged to the point where they always want to keep coming back. So the story is definitely one of its biggest strengths. But on top of it, I definitely feel like as someone that appreciates the more challenging content, another really big strength of it is how they're able to do their raids, because they're definitely able to communicate raid mechanics much better than I was used to in World of Warcraft, which makes the raiding scene so strong. In World of Warcraft, every player, and there's always going to be the odd players like, oh no, I don't need DBM. I can figure everything out myself. Yeah, sure. You for starters, I believe that a lot of those people are straight up lying. I mean, that's just my opinion on it. But beyond that point, like a large majority of players are always going to be using DBM, and there's going to be the call outs and all of these things. And you don't need any of that in 14. And that is something that I found extremely refreshing. You just go in, like the idea in some raids where with the first time that someone told me, oh yeah, for this mechanic, you have to look at the boss. I was like, wait, what? I have to do what now? Look at the boss? I never had to do that before. Why doesn't the game just tell me what to do? I got to look at the boss? Like, I was so surprised and it's something that you didn't even think about it, because I had been raiding for so many years, and WoW, I didn't even think about, oh yeah, looking at the boss, that kind of makes sense. Boss raises his right hand means something, raises his left hand means something else. So it's like the raiding scene and the story is something that I think is one of its strongest points.
So on that note, though, you bring up an interesting kind of thing. How I think 14 really has brought out the abilities and the mechanics within its design, where it doesn't need something like DBM, where World of Warcraft is so heavily reliant on add-ons. But add-ons in and of themselves, we saw some big kind of kickback and drama within 14's community this spring, which I'm actually happy the Yoshi P is addressing it. So the question to you would be, it's like, if you were to take 2 or 3 key features that you get from add-ons that are not currently in 14, what would they be, and why would you want that?
I don't use any add-ons in 14, but like
I don't either, but like I've seen people with them, and I got jealous. I was like the pop-up. Yeah, go ahead.
There's 2 things that I would bring up, and one of them I've never even used myself. I've seen other people use it, and it's something that I kind of miss from World of Warcraft, which is chat bubbles. I definitely would like to have chat bubbles. I think that is much more immersive because I rarely ever look at the actual chat box that's like on the lower left-hand side of the screen. As a matter of fact, a lot of times people will type a bunch of stuff or send me a DM and like 2 hours go by and then I'm like, oh crap, somebody sent me a DM like God knows how long. And I've never replied. And people might even think, oh, look at him, big streamer being rude. It's like, no, I didn't see it. It's literally on the corner of my screen, this tiny font. It'd be much easier if there was like chat bubbles. But besides chat bubbles, the other one that I want, this one's going to be a little bit controversial for some people. I would like to have, what do they call it? They don't call it a damage meter. Yeah, I'd like to have a damage meter like that. That I actually, we have someone in our group that does use, and we make use of the data when we are rating Savage or Extreme or whatever. We make use of it explicitly to try and improve ourselves and sometimes make fun of each other because of banter or whatever, but we never use it in a way where we're like disparaging somebody else. We're not gonna link, like if we happen to be in a raid with someone and we happen to be parsing, we're not gonna link the parse. That person's like, hey man, look at your great parse, bro, you suck, go learn your class. Like we don't do that because that'd be stupid and rude, but we do use parsing, and I do find that to be important. There's a lot of people that go and they say, oh man, parsing is toxic, it's this and that. No, parsing is a tool. What you do with it is what makes it toxic or not toxic.
So you essentially chat bubbles, some UI polish, and then the most controversial being the DPS meter. Which, like for me, I would absolutely just prefer no DPS meter. But what I would love to see, if you ever use that DPS meter, like, because the thing is you have to break terms to get to actually the meat of what I think would be really interesting, is that if you actually take XIV analytics, you take those parses that you upload, it actually breaks down like how many cooldowns did you hit, like did you leave any kind of like, and ultimately what I would prefer, instead of like any kind of real-time like DPS number, because I think that just like how I turned off the mini map in 14, and I really appreciate more of what the game offers in terms of its immersion without having that as just an added UI element, like within it, like I don't want a DPS meter to draw my attention just to see what kind of like, did I hit this number? Am I hitting, this, or somebody's not doing theirs? But rather than instead, like at the end of the fight, whether you wipe or you whatnot, it's like, hey, you got, you took this extra damage, you didn't need to take this. And, like a couple of things, like looking at what analytics the tool does actually to educate you on things that you might do that could actually help you get better. Like, hey, you actually broke 2 combos. And so, I got excited or nervous and I was worried about that. Or, hey, did you know that like you had this sitting on cooldown the whole time, and that would have been, like, oh, I didn't know that. So you used 3 out of 10. Like, oh my gosh, if I start using that more often, then you start to see that added benefit. And so in a way, it would be like the best version of damage meter is that it ends up serving as a personalized education tool, as opposed to like, I could care less what your damage is. I could care less. If I show up and bring my A game, that's the best that I think that's the best we can do. And then all of a sudden, if the game was like, hey, did you know did you know? Like, oh, I didn't
That
think
needs
about
to
that.
be, if that is a feature, it needs to be turned off by default, and it needs to be opt-in, because I can already hear the crowd, if you don't pay my sub, going like, what the hell is this? The game is now lecturing me on how bad I am at the game. What the hell is going on? I would have it on. Like, I would instantly have it on. I was like, okay, how many combos did I break? How many cooldowns did I miss? I want to know all of these things. But a lot of people don't want that, and I understand why. But you know,
Mhm.
if you're someone who is seeking to do aspirational content like extremes and savages and potentially even ultimates, these are things that you definitely need to be looking at. And right now,
Yeah.
those tools are not in the
Right.
game. Someone can actually make it all the way up to and unlock savage without even being able to, you know, putting out a decent amount of damage because they don't know how their
Right.
abilities interweave properly, right? So
And
yeah.
that's where I think the friction and any kind of like, in-game drama tends to spill out
Yeah.
onto the social media, world, in which that it's like, oh, so and so was only doing, like auto attack damage. And it's like the game never actually punished me for not doing auto attack. Where something like Elden Ring, like you immediately feel like, oh, I did something wrong and the game punished me for it. And so it kind of makes you go and learn, where that's where one of the like most interesting terms, like in terms of 14's evolution, is that that's where it was when you look at Stormblood felt so easy up until the last fight. Not to name it, just for not to ruin it for anybody, but there's a fight.
You mean the raid tier?
No, just the actual like trial fight that
Okay.
finishes off the Stormblood main story before you kind of
I know which one.
right. You know what I'm talking about. But like at the time, until like it took a couple of weeks for people to kind of get geared up past that, and then getting slotted back into it for it to become easier. But it was very punishing, and there wasn't any lead up to it. It was just like it felt like at the time, all the reviews, everybody was kind of talking about it. It's like, yeah, the game was like you're just kind of going along, everything's going real smooth, and then all of a sudden there was this big jump, and it was shocking for a lot of people because the entire time they were just kind of going along, and then the game said, hey, by the way, yeah, you need to know
kind of how I
now.
felt. That's kind of how I felt when I tried doing my first Unreal trial, which was when they first introduced Unreal trials. Like, I'd been doing all of the content till then. I'd never done an extreme, but I had been doing all of the raids. So I'm like, I know how to play the game. So I go in and I queue for an Unreal. I didn't even go to Party Finder because I didn't even know how Party Finder worked.
Yeah.
I went through the actual Duty Finder interface to join like just a random group, and I was like, I'm sure this is gonna be fine. It's like I hit a wall on Shiva Unreal. It was like I was like trudging along, bam, no more. I was like, whoa, what the hell just happened? And then the frustration, of course, of like you start to figure out the mechanics, and then the group falls apart. And then you go in and you work through the same mechanics that you already learned, and the group falls apart again. And I was like, oh, okay. So I need to get a static is what I'm seeing. So.
Sounds like that ends up being helpful, and it could also at the same time be a little bit, you got to have a static with, I think, a good tight group of people that you just enjoy playing with, and either harassing, if you or they mess up, etc., and having that it helps out a lot.
The banter is important, and it's like, people need to be able to take certain things in stride. It's just the way that it is.
So, question to you: what is an MMORPG to you?
So, when you're asking this question, I'm going to assume that you're trying to differentiate between an actual MMORPG and like MMO lights. That's what I'm assuming you are shooting for. So it's like an MMORPG to me is like when you have a consistent world that you can be in with a lot of players, like maybe hundreds of players, maybe thousands of players, depends on the scope of the MMO itself. And it needs to have RPG elements to it. There needs to be like either a level up. It does not necessarily have to be leveling up your character, but you could be leveling up skills. Like in the case of Ultima Online, you would grab an axe and you go chopping trees, and your lumberjack skill would go up, but there was no actual character level. As you gain strength, you would also gain more health. So chopping trees would also net you health and stuff like that. Then there were other things that you would do for dexterity, which I forget what they were, because I used to basically like stick a coin in my keyboard and just leave the character AFKing to level up stats and whatnot. But so it needs to have those two components, right? It needs to have certain things that you can get better at as you play the game, where your character actually improves in a certain way. And it needs to be in a massive world with a lot of players. That's the way that I would define an MMORPG. So for instance, if you were to tell me, so is Destiny an MMORPG? No, it's an MMO light. That is like where I kind of like make that distinction. And when it comes to MMO lights, there's like thousands of them. There's tons of them. So Warframe to me is also an MMO light. Like there's probably millions of players playing at any given time, but most of the time they're segmented off into different instances and whatnot. So that's kind of like where I make the difference between a standard MMORPG and an MMO light. In a certain way, Monster Hunter is almost like an MMO light. The main difference is that there's no actual social hub where you can see hundreds of other players.
So on that note, when you define it that way, what is your outlook on the current set of MMORPGs that are on the horizon within the next, at least that we know about, within the next like 3 to 5 years from release? Like, is there any one that stands out as something that you're particularly excited about, hopeful for? Do you worry of the genre overall, or are you generally just optimistic about the state of the game, so to speak?
I mean, my biggest concern when it comes to MMORPGs right now is the business model, because I kind of feel like a lot of MMORPGs that come out, they have to make concessions on the business model because, as you are aware, I think that only 2 MMOs really, charge a monthly fee as a basis, which is World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy 14. And anyone that tries to come into that market with a mandatory subscription fee is going to struggle hard, because you're basically asking people, okay, you have to choose between this MMO or that, because most people are not going to be able to, I'll just subscribe to 5 different MMOs. That's not going to happen. Like, it's already, you already have a subscription to Netflix, maybe even Game Pass. Then on top of it, you have a subscription to 14 or WoW or both. And then here comes another newcomer, an unproven game, let's say, and asks for another 15 bones a month of your money. But having said that, that is my preferred business model to begin with, which makes the business model my main concern about it. Now, when it comes to the future of MMOs, the stuff that I'm looking towards the most, like at short term, I'm curious to see what Dragonflight is like. I will be playing Dragonflight mostly because I want to cover it from a content standpoint, because if I was a consumer, I would not play Dragonflight, because I've been burned too hard by Blizzard. So I'm mostly doing it from a content creation standpoint. Final Fantasy 14, obviously, I'm going to play whatever next expansions they do for however many years, because it's been excellent. And I've not been disappointed yet by almost anything in that game. And Guild Wars 2 is one that I really want to play. I haven't gotten the time because there's just so many things happening at any given time. And Ashes of Creation is one that I'm very curious about. Those are just the ones that instantly jump to mind. But apart from that, I can't really think of a whole lot else.
Yeah, Ashes is
curious, right?
It's the one I'm rooting for, because like on paper,
everybody is
on paper, and like they're saying the right words, and then all of a sudden, like I listen beyond the fan and the gamer, and I see just red flags, like nothing but red flags, and it becomes a difficult conversation to have with people online, because some people already have a belief, just like they had a belief in Cyberpunk,
that it's going to save. Yeah.
Well, and it's that, I didn't get into content creation just to sit here and, piss on people's day, it's like, oh, your dreams here. But it's like, then the same time, the software engineer in me, like when the latest round of updates from the team talk about them hiring more people, which is okay. That's a good thing. It's an admirable thing. But not understanding their plans, that could either be a very bad thing or a very good thing. And ultimately, typically when you hire somebody, they're not instantly like adding value to the team. They're actually slowing the team down. And so not all those roles are development roles. They've got needs and things like that. They're looking for like a assistant, and things like, so there's things that add value to it. But adding just programmers to a late project, which the game is late, is only going to make the game even more late. And then they go and reveal that the map size is now 3 times as large as it used to be. For like, their presentation all sounds valid, but then again, like when I strip out the hype and the excitement and what their model is, it's like, I hope to goodness that I'm not sitting here like the only one saying like, guys, like I would label this as a possible scam or a possible failure until we start actually getting not alphas, but like once we get into the beta phase, that's where I'd be like, okay, this is either going to be really good really bad. But an MMO isn't defined by its launch either. I think Ashes is going to have a strong showing because the hype behind it will be undeniable. Like, there's no way that everybody isn't going to be like, well, I at least got to check this out, right? Because if it's successful, it would technically, I guess, be the only really kickstarted major success at this level. But everything I've heard from the kickstarted era is like all of that has either been
So
scams or they've all fallen apart.
my biggest concern when it comes to Ashes of Creation is almost like, in a way, the stuff that we're hearing from a lot of them. And it's like, I don't follow every
Mhm.
little thing because I also have to cover other games, right?
Yeah.
But one of the concerns that I begin to have is like, is this Star Citizen 2.0, where it's just, oh, we're going to add more things and more things and more things. Eventually, they're going to start selling you like mounts or something instead of spaceships. And it's like, I don't think that's going to be the case because they've, at least their design philosophy up until this point has not been like that. But it definitely makes you wonder, like, okay, so how
Mhm.
long is long enough? Like, how many times they're going to be iterating and improving and doing? And because I'm all for give me the game when it's finished. But the problem with a lot of these more community crowd-funded projects is that
Mhm.
it's very easy for the developers to fall into the trap of, hey, we can keep getting money. Look at this. Look at how many more people just like, because that I feel is what Star Citizen is. I always tell this to people. I don't think Star Citizen's ever going to release because why would they? They're making so much money right now. Releasing is just going to slow that down. This is like,
Well, maybe. Well, and same thing. Like, even though, like, even with Cyberpunk, Mystera pointed that out with Cyberpunk. It's like, yeah, they've made improvements. That's exciting, and they actually just announced an expansion. It's like, as
yeah,
long as the team that's behind it is passionate and they keep putting it out, I don't have any concerns for Ashes of that. Like, if Ashes shows up and they go to work and hey, turns out maybe we got some things wrong or we need to make some adjustments here or there, great, keep doing that. And then hey, guess what? They keep putting out content. That's the dream, right? It's not about the promises all at launch. It's also like, do they keep showing up and delivering? Like, yeah, what happens 6 months in, a year in? Now, do they, if they keep releasing content, updates, and then maybe like expansions, etc., Ashes will do fine because guess what? It will find its base that really enjoys that, and they'll support the ever living crap out of it. Same thing. I know Star Citizen gets brought up, and it's like, I want them to. I want really good games for people to choose, and I do think you're right. You hit the nail in the head. I think the business model in and of itself is one of the reasons why we haven't seen that much innovation because the risk is too high, and players don't have the patience to necessarily support you developing the game. And we've seen that time and time again. And so we've seen all these games come out with the subscription model and then change, and then essentially just kind of live in this limbo. And I'm hoping that we'll see some updated business model overall because I don't think the subscription is strong enough and then the player base is strong enough to really support brand new MMOs. And if brand new MMOs aren't coming out to invite people into the genre itself, then I see as a genre that it just eventually ages itself out. I know that we do get younger guys. I've seen like within the range of like 24 and more starting to jump into MMOs because then all of a sudden they start having kind of money to kind of fund having a device that does it or a computer that does it. But I'm hoping that we'll see that it doesn't become a barrier for entry. Why would I
yeah.
why would I spend money each month on your game when I could go spend $1,000 a month optionally on this free game? And that's what I end up seeing. I see these kids spending crazy
Yeah,
amounts of money.
that's the weird thing. How people will be like, well, yeah, I don't want to pay this monthly subscription, but then they'll go and they'll just like spend thousands of dollars on like Diablo Immortal, which is an insanely predatory game that I've spoken at length about. I think it
Yes.
is completely ridiculous. I've railed on that game nonstop and will continue to do so
And
because
it's making bank.
it is. It's like over 100 million bones at this point. It is completely ridiculous.
Yeah.
But one question that I wanted to ask you
Yeah.
is: you were talking about the alphas and the betas and all of this,
Mhm.
and another one of my concerns when it comes to the MMO genre, more so than most other games, is just the amount of testing that gets done and how developers do the testing. So to give an idea, I don't know if you've been following Dragonflight. I imagine not because you've had a pretty bad experience in BFA. So
I have not. Like Dragonflight,
yeah.
there's an interesting thing, man. That I want you to ask this question. So make sure you store it because, like, it's for me. I see kind of two pathways with Dragonflight. Either it delivers on what hungry WoW players have wanted for a long time, and we're not talking expansion over expansion. And I think it has to deliver what they've wanted for a long time and then follow it up with another expansion that builds off of that. Meaning player investment, none of this borrow power BS. Like all of these little things, right? If they do that, will we see like a 14 refugee mindset where it's like, oh man, because you see people like, I'm never going back to WoW, I'm all in on 14. And then it's like, you're going to go play Dragonflight because the hype will be there. You're going to want to check it out. Will it hold on to you? I don't think it can, unless they really fundamentally shift their mindset and model. But I would love to be wrong, just from a case study alone. Like the data scientist in me would love to see Dragonflight just dominate, just to see like
anomalies,
just to see like, okay, all right, now we know more about ourselves. The other option though is that it does exactly what it's been doing, comes out, oh my gosh, wow, so great. I've heard that every expansion that later becomes, oh, this is such garbage, and this is why. And that, that's how content creators get to eat and go and survive another year, is when a game is bad, So it's like, you kind of like, like Bellular's going to do really good. Like he's going to do really good either way. But,
Asmongold already said, oh man, if Blizzard lied to us, dude, imagine the amount of content I'm going to get out of that.
Yeah. Can I get, banned from WoW? I won't get near 1 million plus views, but like just go ahead, do it, man.
But like the question that I wanted to ask, so you haven't really been following the Dragonflight alphas and betas, but basically what's been happening, and this is something that is a major turnoff for someone like me, is like in their traditional testing phase, what Blizzard will do is they'll just like put the whole quest lines up. They just won't have cutscenes, but you'll be able to basically see the whole story before the game comes out. You see the whole story, but not just that. The players that are interested in things like, oh, I want to min-max my crafting, they'll know where all the nodes are. They'll know what like is the fastest. Like the guides are going to be on Wowhead before the game even comes out. Like what's the most efficient way of leveling up blacksmithing? What's the best spec to play as a protection warrior? What's the best spec to play as some other class, right? And I kind of find that takes a lot of the magic away of an MMO launch. And I think that is a fundamental problem that we have in this genre in particular. Like, I don't know if you remember, Josh Strife Hayes made that video where he said New World is basically a figured out game, which it was. When it came out, everybody knew exactly what New World was because they were allowed to level up in the betas to the maximum level. And there might have been like maybe an expedition or two missing, I don't know. But like everybody already knew what was in the game, how to, what was the most efficient ways of doing it. Most of the guide content is done while the games are in an alpha state. And I think that is fundamentally bad for the health of the game, because the player base is not going in on even footing. Like someone who does not consume media goes into the MMO and people are literally running laps around them. And there's nothing they can do about it unless they're all of a sudden, okay, now I need to become an expert. I need to go consume 1,000 hours of content on YouTube and Wowhead and all of these websites. And I think that is a huge problem. And that is something where these companies need to be testing their MMOs more so internally. And when they are doing these stress tests, it needs to be, okay, here, the same way that Creative Business Unit 3 does the media tour, right? What do you guys get? You guys get like 2 zones, a training dummy, and a dungeon, and that's it. That is what you get. Go do your testing, report on your classes, do whatever, and they can do all of their testing like this in these MMOs. The reason they don't is because they want to find out, oh, is there a quest chain that's progress? Like, that's not the player's job. I mean, let me tell you what PTR actually stands for, not paid QA.
Yeah, exactly. Would you connect any of that though also in terms of what you like, kind of the
Oh, you broke up. Hello?
Testing.
Yes, you broke up. We're back.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Cool. All right, I'm gonna make a note. 53 minutes. So clean up the audio on that one, so that way I sound like a genius. Would you relate any of what you just kind of like asked in terms of also somebody who's a full-time streamer and how they present their content, because they can consume and play and digest and then basically do that guy, like even if you take out the PTR, I would still say somebody who's a full-time content creator streamer has an advantage over somebody who clearly is like, oh, I'm going to come in on the weekend, where then the expectation is that, hey, look up the guide. I mean, do you understand what I'm asking? Like,
Yes,
you're a player, and it's like, hey, it's the weekend, I'm ready to play. Because I think there is this weird problem in there, and then it becomes that the expectation is like, the information's out there, too. Don't waste my time. So from a gamer to gamer perspective, that yes, I think
find
the
that to
PTRs,
be,
but also the content creation side of it is a really interesting point.
I think that is another problem, and that I feel is a problem more so of the community of MMOs than necessary the community as a whole, not just the content creators. Like, for starters, there's obviously an incentive on YouTube and on Twitch and whatever to always be the first and to get there ahead of everybody else and to instantly make your guide. So this a lot of times even leads to situations where the first guides that come out are potentially not the best ones, because they're going to be relevant for a short period of time, and that short period of time is getting shorter and shorter because we basically live in something that I refer to as the culture of the now. We need to know what is happening now at any given moment, and I need to know all of the information right now because I don't want to waste my time, right? Yeah, everybody looks at it. I don't want to waste my. It's like, what exactly to define by wasting your time? Jumping into a raid and figuring out mechanics? Is that a waste of time? Because in my static, for instance, we only did the raid, the P5S, the first time on Sunday, because one of our static members was not available for our other 2 raid days. So we just delayed it. It's like, whatever. So the idea is we don't look at the strats and we go in there blind and we try to figure it out by ourselves, because that is the most fun way to do things, or at least that is the way that we think. I don't want to purport my own opinion as a fact. That is the way that I find to be the most fun, going in there and trying to figure stuff out. Now, unfortunately, a large majority of the player base, particularly when it comes to MMOs, day one, they will have listings in Party Finder, and this happens in Party Finder in 14, just like it happens in Group Finder in World of Warcraft, and it'll be like, know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, literally 30 minutes after the patch launch, know what you're doing. What do you mean, know what I'm doing? The patch came out 30 minutes ago. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Yeah. And there are very, very few groups. There are some, but there are very, very few groups that'll be like, hey, we're going in blind, chill mode, come hang out, let's try to figure this out, right? And a lot of people, they're just like, oh, I don't have the time. I got to go do this, got to go do that. And they see more value in getting to the part where they loot the chest at the end of the raid than the actual journey to looting the chest. And I find that is I don't understand how we got to that point, because to me, the chest is worthless. It doesn't mean anything. The only thing the chest actually enables is me to be powerful enough to take on the next challenge that comes. That is the only value that gear has, which is also I play a tank. I'm always going to be the last one to get geared. The DPS should always get first, because that way we can clear things faster. But it just doesn't make sense to me how a majority of the community is just obsessed with loot. And a lot of the times they will go through the trouble of, for instance, doing a savage tier in 14 or something. And they're like, oh, thank God that's done. I got all my gear. I don't want to do that again. It's like, well, what was the point of doing it then? You have all this gear. It's worthless. You're going to take this gear into normal raids? Yeah. Really? Listen, I am doing normal raids as a Dark Knight. I don't know how Dark Knight works. I'm just doing it to get the achievement of 300 whatever dungeons to get the mount. I don't know. I don't even know how it works, and I can clear it just fine. It's just it's not even remotely a problem, because the normal, more casual content does not need this super high-end hardcore gear. And so people go through the trouble of doing it, and then they get there and say, oh, thank God that's over. Never want to do that again. It's like, well, what was the point then? You were torturing yourself to acquire this gear that is now useless to you. I don't understand.
Yeah, that's where I see a lot of people get really frustrated and burnt out really easily on that, because as soon as you see the hamster wheel you're on, the thing is that I would say that 14 as a strength says it's an optional hamster wheel versus I'm on it. And that's where you tend to see veterans like myself go, all right, I'll wait, because I'm like, I don't need to go and throw myself into that right now. But new players I'm in, and then all of a sudden the next expansion they're like, wait a minute, this feels very much like we just did this, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, you just did. And all of us veterans are kind of over there by the water cooler, kind of chuckling, all right, just wait to point 4. It's like, well, this is how it works, man.
But it is the thing, because if people are so obsessed about, and I get that for some people it's going to be the glamour, that I kind of understand, because you can dye the savage gear, whereas you can't dye the normal raid gear. So there I can kind of like see where the problem is. But like beyond that, basically, if all you want is power, you wait one patch, you buy the crafted gear. It's now more powerful than the savage gear that came before it. Like, just look at the patch that we have. The raid gear of the previous patch was item level 600 for every single piece except the weapon, which is 605. And the crafted gear this patch was 610. So it's like, it's instantly invalidated.
Yeah. No, thanks for your hard work. But as long as you know that,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
like, that's why I'm like, I'm not gonna, like, same thing with Destiny. Like, you brought it up earlier. It said, I know that when Lightfall drops, all my power levels all get boosted up. So I don't focus in on power level. I focus in on kind of chasing different weapons. I focus more on what horizontal progress will carry forward with me, and that's the grind that I choose to invest my time in, because the hamster wheel grind of the, like the borrowed power, like that is the gearing. Final Fantasy 14's gearing system is a borrowed power system, because as soon as you get it, the next update could have validated it and just actually but it's, at least it's honest about it. Like, and I know that term people be like, oh, I hate WoW and WoW has borrowed power. It's like, no. The term is maybe more synonymous with what WoW has done, but it doesn't necessarily mean that every instance of a borrowed power system is cursed to fail. It does have its trade-offs, though.
There's like, I don't think those two compare nearly as well,
Right.
because there's a certain, and this is one of the things that I love about the gear in 14, is there's a deterministic aspect to it, where I can go like, no, this week I'm getting this loot piece, and you go and you get that loot piece. In World of Warcraft, it's more like, hey, let me spin the slot machine.
Yeah.
See if
RNG.
I can get something great, or I can get nothing. It's great.
I think RNG is a perfectly fine way to have a progression system, as long as there's a static, measurable return. Meaning, like, I always kind of say XP is like the most beautiful system, and I wish more systems would use it at their end game, because it's perfect for leveling. It's a guaranteed, this is what you get. It doesn't have to be the efficiency, but it's like, I'm perfectly fine. Like, if there's like New World has got this right now, like there's a static way of focusing power progression wherever you want. And it's a nice, simple, easy to understand system, especially after you do it a couple times. You're like, oh, okay, I get what this is. But there's still also the RNG side of it. So when we go run dungeons, I'm getting my static progression, and there is also a chance that I get RNG progression. And it both ways, every time, feels good, because I go in with, I know I'm going to have this at the end of it. But then there's always that chance that I end up getting a little bit more than that. And it ends up being a kind of a differential. Sometimes it was like, one time it was like a +3, and one time it was a +10. Both times felt great. I did not feel punished because I got a +3 one time. I felt that was awesome. And then, because I still also got what my guarantee was, I went to work, I got paid. And then RNG is like a bonus that can happen sometimes, that just kind of, it's not a promise, but it is like there. And that's just something that I kind of feel pretty good about. I do want to, like, Fernando asked this question a little while ago, and I pinned it because I wanted to actually talk to you about it specifically, because they ask Ashes of Creation versus Blue Protocol. Now, we talked about Ashes. You're not directly following it as like closely as I am. I feel like I'm just so negative. Like, I feel like I come across so negative on Ashes, just because I want to. I honestly, I'm like, I would rather be negative and wrong and just deliver than be excited and right. But have you been following Blue Protocol?
So before I answer that, for starters, you broke up again. Yeah, you broke up again.
Oh man, like, at least it's recording here. It's perfect, but I was like, I don't know what's going on.
Take another note.
Yeah. There we go. Anyway,
before I answer your question, you brought up the damn it, the freeze kind of broke it up for me. What was the thing that you said right before?
We were talking about we were talking about borrowed power with gear progression. How Final Fantasy.
No, it was, okay, I know. It was the expression that you made of like, you go to work, you get your reward. I just think that's hilarious to me. Like the concept, oh, I'm going to go to work, and it's like, it should be a fun activity. A lot of people will say, oh, I'm working towards this thing. Yeah. And I always find that a little bit like, you shouldn't be you should be doing something. And then sure, you get a reward at the end of it, but the whole thing should not be considered work, is kind of like, anyway, besides the point. So Ashes of Creation versus Blue Protocol. So personally, I lean more towards Ashes of Creation. because I kind of miss the more traditional MMORPG. Blue Protocol is going to be more action based, even though Ashes of Creation is also going to have an action system. But from what I've seen of Blue Protocol so far, like I feel like they might be going through a little bit of a development hell because they've been extremely silent recently. Am I correct? Because I know
dude, like not just like absolutely silent. And it's like they the last round of news we officially got was from winter 2021, in which it talked about Chinese and Korean publishing deals have been signed for the game.
No.
I don't necessarily. I think when you look at like the pandemic, and then I think they've also Bandai's been restructuring, and then when you look at the thing, it's like every sign points to, all right, okay, we're gonna figure out remote work. We're gonna really funnel in on the team, because it's not about just launching the game. It's also like, how do you support the game after? But they've been in beta, like they were doing closed beta tests, and all that little hints and stuff are pointing to some really positive, exciting things to come. But it is absolutely quiet, and I hope that by the time we hear from them next, they're really ready for that full-on marketing beta launch, as opposed to like another year of just like, hey, we're adding this or we're doing that, etc. But
the biggest problem
is beautiful. It's so beautiful.
When you start telling me about like Korean and Chinese publishing and all of this stuff, my mind instantly goes pay to win, Lost Ark, because like Lost Ark is a beautiful game. Lots of people love Lost Ark. I can't stand playing it because I already know that you can basically pay to win in that game. And a lot of people are like, it's pay to something. It's like,
people will justify the pay to win
however you want. It's pay to win. Okay, it's just that simple.
Well, and it's like, and the thing is that if it's my pay to win, then I'm perfectly fine with it. Versus like, oh yeah, it ends up being like, if you know the relationship, as my wife would say, like DTR, define the relationship. If you go into a game knowing like, hey, it's going to ask you for money at these points, then when it does ask you for that money, it's less of a burden, then you're like, all right, I knew that was going to be the case. I can now decide, because I'm an adult and it is my money, whether I want to use it or not. What happens is that these games are sneaky, and then it's like, okay, this is good. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait, how the hell did I spend so much money? Like
I'm going to bring up a point where I fundamentally disagree with what you just said.
Okay.
And we're probably not going to agree with this, and that's fine. But it's like the whole thing where you say this is my money, so I can do whatever I want. There is that whole saying where it's like your freedom ends where my freedom begins, or something along those lines. And fundamentally, I believe that a lot of the players that are wailing on mobile games and, gacha games and basically pay to win games as a whole, they are making gaming worse for everybody else, because there's not a single publisher in the world that does not look at Diablo Immortal with the disgusting levels of monetization that game has. And they don't look at it and they're like, huh, so they made $100 million, huh? And people barely said a peep, huh? Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. There's not a publisher in the world that is not looking at the success of Diablo Immortal. And with players just like basically wailing on it, I think that is actually an extremely negative thing. And you are entitled to do that, just like I'm entitled to think that is terrible.
What's the fix though? Because if you go and complain about it online, congratulations, you've just funneled them easily another $500,000. Like you cannot lie that content creation and the bitching about it doesn't promote the game, because what it does is it drives more people to go and say, like Flappy Bird is the ultimate like actual numbers. Like, hey, don't go play this game, it sucks. Flappy Bird, worldwide phenomenon.
I mean, here's the way that I've been doing it. I would actually say that it's toxic, and I recognize that it is, but I basically shame people that do that. Like if you spend like, I don't know, $1,000 in Diablo Immortal, I will make fun of you online. It's just that simple. It's like, listen, you could have done so much more with those $1,000, and you put them in that disgusting game that I've played, by the way, because I can say that it's disgusting because I finished the game. I finished the game. I mean, I finished as much content as there was at the time that I played it, and I instantly deleted my character because I just wanted to be able to say, I finished this game, I played it, I understand the systems, and they're all bad. There's not a single good system in this game. And there were people saying, behind the monetization, there's a good... No, there isn't. It's a fucking terrible game. Even if
Diablo 3, go play Diablo 3.
No, it's worse than
Right.
Diablo 3.
But
The
I'm just
gameplay
saying,
is not
like,
nearly
just
as
go
good.
play Diablo 3. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
there's actually an offering. As like, it's kind of like, it makes me kind of laugh when I thought of that, because I was remembering back when they announced like the Xbox One, and then the president then of the Xbox was like, "Oh yeah, if you don't have internet, like we gotta go play a 360," and everybody's like, "We're just
That
gonna
was
play a PS4,
brilliant.
dumbass."
That was a brilliant marketing move. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, you don't
All right.
like our current product? Buy our old one. It's like, what?
What? No, I'm just gonna go buy that other product right next to it that's not doing this.
So Chili actually brought up a comment that reminded me of the thing that I wanted to tell you earlier, which was what it's not that. It's the when you were being negative towards Ashes of Creation, there is a portion of people that will look at a content creator being negative about a video game as a bad thing. What they don't understand is the main reason why a content creator can be negative about a video game is because they deeply care about it and they want it to succeed.
Yeah, well, it's that, and that's
Which
what
I think is going to
I
be the
also say
case for
negative
you.
because I know people perceive my words as that, and all they are is just questions. Like, these are the things that I'm looking out for. Like on paper, Ashes sounds like a MMO player's dream fantasy MMO built by a guy who loves MMOs. Like, on paper. And then the adage is like, if it's too good to be true, it possibly is. But like, I'm actively rooting for the game, but I just want to be honest about it and not sit here and just try and overhype something, because I think that only could disservice the game. People have put labels on Ashes that I think that, like, even if Ashes comes out and it's the first ever like 9.5 out of 10 MMORPG to be reviewed by somebody who, but to be reviewed by somebody who hates MMOs, like IGN, when they review this MMO, will say it's like an MMO, guys. We really don't like MMOs because they don't make us money on our, on our big massive platform. Like, that's the incentive structure that we can poke fun at, because it's true. But like, if it was the first MMO to do that thing, like, if you thought it was going to be a 10 out of 10, you're somewhat slightly disappointed, right? Like, immediately you've set a game that comes out and does something that Shadowbringers is a great example. Like, it's like, it came out of the gate, people had low expectations for it, and Yoshi P separated that game from its Metacritic bonus structure. And I think the devs are able to ease up, have a unclench a little bit, and actually deliver out this, like, really what I would call a masterpiece of storytelling within the MMO space. And like, it comes down to that, like, yeah, holy crap. But I see people setting these expectations. Meanwhile, I see a lot of red flags, and I'm hopeful that's just me being cautious. And I just want to be optimistic. But people will, oh man, it's the internet, right? Like, the comments make me laugh, because I'm like, okay, like, dude, I hope to goodness that it's everything that you have told me and professed in this game. It sounds like it's like the second coming of Christ in terms of the MMORPG, and it will save us all. Hallelujah, let's go. Like, like, that sounds cool. However, like, I'm gonna come back down to earth, and I'm just gonna be like, okay, well, there's a science here, and it comes down to a business model. And so, kind of bringing this all back into kind of getting a kind of a focus on Blue Protocol, like, I have concerns for Blue Protocol. I think it's beautiful. They've announced it as a free-to-play MMO. It's Japanese, though. Like, I don't know if that makes a difference for you, but that means is that people will immediately kind of associate a Korean business model, but it is going to be, or at least Japanese business model. That might change too. I personally have advocated for a buy-to-play, because I think that puts at least everybody.
I like buy-to-play. And
then
like,
maybe a battle pass or something, like some kind of optional sub that people can jump into. The subscription isn't going to work, dude. Like, as much as you and I love it, like, it just doesn't work anymore.
Here's my point about the battle pass, though. I'm someone that does not like battle passes to begin with. And the main reason is, like, in order for you to make a battle pass, it has to be a battle pass that does not mess with the way that I play the game. Because I haven't done many battle passes because I don't tend to like them very much. But like, one of the battle passes that I did was in a game called Dauntless, which is kind of like a Monster Hunter MMO, as people were talking about at the start.
I remember that was people were pushing that out. Like, I remember seeing a lot of content creators. I think they're doing a lot of sponsorships as well.
I even did a sponsorship for them because I was playing the game. Like, I do very few sponsorships, but I was like, I like this game. I don't mind doing a sponsorship for it.
Not sponsored, but you can use chair in the if you're watching live, if you want to get a really sweet chair. I love these chairs, and I'm happy to team up with them. Anyway, go ahead.
But what ended up happening with their battle pass is that the way in which their battle pass worked, they would tell me something like, okay, we want you to go kill an earth behemoth, which is the monster that you go hunt. And I was like, well, I want to go kill a fire one because I want to craft this fire weapon. But okay, I have to go kill the earth one because the battle pass is only going to be around for a certain amount of time. So you want to do the battle pass to get the rewards and all that. So I'd go and I'd kill the earth behemoth. Then I'm like, can I go kill a fire one now? And the battle pass would say something like, go kill a wind behemoth. I was like, it's like I'm being forced to play the game in a way that I don't want to play it to fulfill the conditions of this battle pass. And like, that is a problem. That is a serious problem. And that is where I push against battle pass, because just having like a progression path or whatever, I don't care. It doesn't make any difference to me. But when the game starts wanting you to do things a certain way, and this is going to be the same thing for Diablo 4, by the way, where they're going to be telling you something like, oh, go kill 20 of these monsters in Act 2. Well, what if I want to play in Act 3 today? Well, too bad. Do what we tell you. It's like, right. So that's the problem.
That's a broken progression system within a battle pass, though. Like, and that's where, gosh, like I'm with you, because I think
Halo Infinite did something like that, didn't it? Where it was like, kill people with weapon X or
and
whatever.
that's gross. Like that's stop defining the style of play and actually reward the style of play. And I think essentially the other aspect is that you brought up FOMO, and I think that's bad for MMOs. I think that's bad because MMO players, we stick around, we're there, but then all of a sudden you add that extra level of pressure and it takes that relaxation model off of it. Halo's progression is broken, but their FOMO isn't, because you keep the battle pass. So I can go, I've got season 1 and season 2, and they've delayed season 3, and they got problems, like 343, they can turn it around, but I think they got to really leadership change that whole business there. But they let you keep that battle pass. So if the MMO, especially the MMORPG, if they go with the battle pass model, which New World might, we still haven't heard much about how they're going to monetize their game. But even with Blue Protocol or any other MMO, I think that if you make a battle pass that works off of experience, so you're playing however you want to play, playing the game, like whether you want to just be a crafter, and you're leveling your battle pass and it doesn't expire, so that like you come into the game late, you want to take a break or whatever, you come back and you're like, oh man, I got more things that I can grind on if I choose to,
if I want to.
And I still, I didn't finish that battle pass. Okay, I still can go do that. I think that actually would be
it's like
something I'd love to see tested. I don't know if it's the ideal new model, but I'd love to see an MMO test that theory and see if it's financially sustainable and if the players actually have a good experience with it.
So like think of it, for instance, in my example, where it's like, oh, I want to go kill this fire behemoth, but I can't because I have to keep killing the behemoths that the battle path tells me. If there was no limited time, I'd be like, oh, I'll go kill the fire behemoth, get him a fire weapon, and now I'll go do whatever the battle pass says. And if I feel like killing something else in between, I'll take a break, kill the other thing, and then go back and do more. Like that is completely different. But another point that I wanted to bring up as we were talking about Blue Protocol and the potential of it having a battle pass. So this was something that I was thinking about as I was analyzing the business model of Diablo 4, which I'm not sure if you've checked.
I'm following Diablo 4. Yeah. Like I'm excited for it, but at the same time, I'm like, guys, like
I thought it was pretty disgusting the way that they're like, oh yeah, so here's the box price, and then we're going to have a battle pass, and then it's going to have a premium portion and all of this. And I'm like, okay, listen, can we at the very least, as a bare minimum for a buy to play game, can we get 1 year's worth of content? Is that too much? Like this is what we get with the latest 2 Monster Hunters that came out. So World, all of the latest Monster Hunters ever since World, we've had 2 years of free support where they're adding new content to the game and they don't charge you anything. They also add paid DLC that you can buy in the form of cosmetics and stuff like that. Nothing that influence player power, right? But they give you 2 years of support every single time. So here's the game, and here's like 2 years worth of free content. They dole it out over a couple of months every now and then. Can we at least, with these new games that are coming out, if you're going to eventually come out with a battle pass, or if you come out with a battle pass from the get-go, can the premium track of that battle pass for the first year at least just for 1 year, can we have 1 year of playing the game without you trying to reach into our wallet? Or is that too much? Like, I think it's unreasonable, the expectations that these companies have, where they're like, oh, I'm gonna sell cosmetics and I'm gonna sell you a battle pass with a premium version and the extra premium version, which is the case of Diablo, which has like 2 tiers of premium battle pass or whatever. And then we're gonna want you to do this
cosmetics, and yeah.
And it's like, dude, can we get 1 year's worth of content for our purchase at least? No, it's too much to ask. I mean, come on, it's ridiculous.
But yet, and back to your point, and while we disagree, like we in spirit, like you and I are on the same page, I feel like maybe I'm more of the cynic in this regards, because it's going to print them money. You know, like
oh yeah,
we could sit here and like it's literally like we're not giving them that money, but then literally
Diablo
like
4.
everybody else is. Diablo 4 is going to print money,
Yeah,
and it's going to
it's
going to be bundled with Game Pass most likely, and so that Game Pass is going to remove that like entry fee, etc. But then they're going to get you on the back end as well, and it's going to print them so much money. And it's the thing where when it comes down to it, I think there is some level of, I don't know, miraculousness to the fact that we still get like real games. Like Elden Ring is such a great example of that, where it's like it is a rare example. It's not that every game will be an Elden Ring, so it does present that. And the fact that Elden Ring exists in an age where these mobile games and these, you know, the gambling games and these like all these little things are just literally printing money and costing the developers much less. It does to say, good, at least there's definitely passion devs out there that are like, we're going to work on this, and also we're able to raise the money to build that development out itself. So I'm really thrilled that Elden Ring has been so successful.
3 names that I will give you that currently have my full trust. 3 names. Yoshi P, Miyazaki, Hidetaka Miyazaki, who's the guy behind From Software, and Ryozo Tsujimoto, who's the guy behind Monster Hunter. Right now, these are the only 3 developers that I can trust to bring actual value. Every other game that I get involved in, most of the times, I assume the value proposition is not going to be there.
Interesting. The I actually like, for me, when I look at what I think is interesting to see in just the genre, is what AGS is doing, what Amazon's doing with both New World, with even with why am I drawing a blank? We just talked about it. Lost Ark. But also like with the potential for Throne of Liberty, then building another MMORPG, like they are really leaning heavily into a specific genre in and of itself. And it's truly quite interesting, because I know there's a lot of fear behind New World. Like I remember, you know, back last summer, you know, like New World, pay to win, all these like things. And it's like, they come out and they're like, you buy the game, you can buy some cosmetics. Well, you know, we're going to keep working on the game.
The business model of New World, even though I haven't been playing New World, is a business model that I really like. You just buy the game. You should play the game.
Yeah.
And if you want to, you know, if you want to like buy a cosmetic or whatever, it's whatever. I do feel like they came off the gate instantly with the cosmetics, which again, I kind of feel like in the first year of service, they should kind of ease up on that a little bit.
And then interesting that they have, because they talked about like some, like they were like, well, you know, should we do a subscription, as they're kind of like, you know, doing some interviews, and it's like, no, like that's asking a lot, you know, it's asking a lot for a new MMO, you know, like, you know, and I was like, I wonder if that means that would they introduce a subscription later? And my theory is like New World has a subscription. It's called Prime Gaming. Like it's that system that's connected to Prime.
You get stuff from it, right?
Get stuff from it, and it's meaning that it's like I could see a world in which that you have like one subscription that covers multiple MMORPGs, as opposed to like one sub per game, because I think you see sub fatigue overall.
That's one of the things that I brought up when it comes particularly with Blizzard games. This is something that, you know, if nobody in their marketing team has thought of this, and well, maybe not their marketing, maybe their financial, I don't know which department will handle something like this, but if nobody has thought of this, they are either behind the times or they're not interested in providing the customers with value, which is your World of Warcraft subscription should give you things in Hearthstone, which they have done from time to time as like little promotional, but I'm talking about like on the regular. Like you should regularly get I don't know what currency they have in Hearthstone. You should get some of that. It should include like whatever Diablo 4 premium version of Battle Pass you have should be included in your World of Warcraft subscription. And other games could have additional benefits that you could get from having a World of Warcraft subscription, because that would add value to that subscription, which I don't think the value proposition is there right now.
They've got it for the WoW and WoW Classic, but I think 1,000% right. Imagine if it was just a sub for Battle.net, like,
yeah, exactly.
And with Microsoft acquisition potential, still on the horizon, like I could see something like that in that regards and that's where we were asking back in the day, like it's been a while now, but like, would we see World of Warcraft subscription enter into Game Pass? And because they have the currency exchange, like there's so many like interesting things, but it just give you like, a coin. Who knows? Like there's a lot of, it'll be interesting to see how the industry responds.
Filthy WoW token.
Yeah. Which Yoshi P said, like, he said they were looking into it when WoW was introducing it. Well, no. Like, and he said that if they liked it, they'd implement it. And I was like, I think he clearly sees the flaw in the token, it's like, and it's so funny because Force, I think Force Gaming tweeted this out. In fact, we have Force scheduled for this one-on-one at the end of this month. So guys, be sure to like, subscribe, and share, and come back for that podcast. But he was talking about like how he was playing like Classic for Wrath, and he was like, I need to go buy whatever, and it's like, I can't. Like how he's been ruined.
He's been conditioned.
He's been conditioned. We've all been conditioned. Yeah.
And here's the problem. Like a lot of people have effectively been conditioned to accept this. I was talking about this on one of my other podcasts as well, where we were talking about, so listen, you know how Wrath of the Lich King just came out, or, maybe it was a couple of weeks ago. I don't know. Wrath of the Lich King came out. And basically there was, when I opened up my Battle.net one day, cause I was just checking to see if I had Dragonflight beta or something. I didn't. Blizzard hates me. But so I opened it up and instantly splash screen comes up. Boom! Buy the heroic version of Wrath of the Lich King. And I'm like, isn't this included in the fee? Like, what are we talking? So I go and I check it out, and apparently, and this is where it really shows the amount of conditioning that people have been. For €49, which converts to $49, because I think it's almost 1-to-1. I think the dollar is even more powerful now. But either way, so it's around 50 bones, right? For 50 bones, you can buy 2 pets and 1 character boost for $50.
Yeah.
I'm like, are you insane?
Yeah. Well, people have money that they like to throw away.
That's not it. That's not it. And then for $79, you get those same 2 pets, the same character boost, 30 days of game time, and 2 mounts. And I was like, bro, what is this?
And then you have tons of people just swiping and swiping and swiping.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But and then we were talking about like, and then you have a game like an Elden Ring. It's like, how are you even going to remotely compare the amount of value that you can get out of something like an Elden Ring versus 2 pets and a character boost?
Yeah. But
people will do it. People are just like, oh yeah, I want the full Wrath of the Lich King experience, even though there weren't boosts back then yet. But whatever.
Dude, I know. It's such an interesting evolution as a fan of the genre to see how, it's come, it's gone. In fact, there's so many other questions. Well, we need to get you back, because I was like, we got through question 1 on my list of 5 that I sent you, because the next one would be like, what mistakes has been made in the genre. So we're gonna have to because I know you and I are gonna actually do a little collab on New World.
Yes.
For your channel. So guys, if you have Rory tagged here, if you're not following him, please follow him. He's gonna have a video with me. So I do want to answer one question before we actually wrap up this show specifically. And Astrowood says, why the hell would you trust Amazon? My answer would be I don't, but I do actually trust Amazon. I do trust what AGS is doing, the game studios within. There's a segmentation within the company itself, and you can definitely not like things that they do and whatnot. But like I tell you, the reason why actually I trust what AGS is doing is because I'm paying attention. They say what they say, they mean what they say, they follow through, they deliver, and I think as the gamer in me, I'm going to root for good games. I'm going to root for good business models. And if they're willing to go and put themselves out there and try and fail and get back up on the horse and not quit, I think that's admirable. I think that's admirable. That saying, you don't have to follow along with that theory at all, but I'll keep you guys up to date. Like I said, when New World was at its lowest point, that people are analyzing the game wrong, and that it's going to have its moment, and that's still to come, because the team that's behind it is passionate and they're working, and we're already starting to see that, and we haven't even seen what's coming. Like I tell you this with all sincerity, I don't think the general gaming public is actually really aware of what Amazon is about to do. And they are all in on gaming. And if that doesn't make the toes, like your feet kind of get a little nervous, like you should understand why Phil Spencer has called them out. That is a terrifying phrase from a company with trillions of dollars that they just have to spend, so it'll be interesting to see what they do next. I honestly think that it could be both good or bad, and the analyst in me, the gamer in me, is like, if they make good games that are good for that are good for the like for gamers, great. If they make bad ones, I'll call that out too. But to sit here and just discount them, I think that people are discounting them at their peril, and they're not paying attention. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, when it comes to Amazon Game Studios, when it comes to the actual development of New World, there's gonna be stuff that we're gonna be talking about in my video, so I don't want to get too deeply into it. That I had some problems with some of the decisions that they've made, but it wasn't problems from terms of business model. The big problem that I had is how in Lost Ark, initially, at least with their first like big content patch, they ended up being even more predatory than the Korean version of Lost Ark.
Yeah, it's really aggressive.
And that to me was like a big loss of like trust in that company, because I was just like, I'm not interested in Lost Ark. I get it. It's pay to win. It's whatever.
Right.
Whoever likes it, go play it. But that when they were like, oh yeah, now you need to get to this thing, you need to have this item level, gear score level, whatever. And it was so incredibly aggressive that I was like, oh, so you're basically funneling people into the pay to win.
Well, and they did talk about it, and I'm not justifying it, because it's like I'm not playing Lost Ark. Like I was like, all right, I played the Korean version. I was like, yeah, it's fun. And then I keep going back to New World and Final Fantasy. Like those tend to be like kind of the two games that I just live in. And at this point in my life, really don't have room for a third, right? And so it's like, okay, yeah, the controller support also feels a little bit weak, especially like I get better support in New World, even though it doesn't support it natively. And I'm like, oh, that's weird.
I didn't like controller on Lost Ark at all. I thought it was bad.
There was just a couple of things that it was like it would work. You could do like 98%, but you talk to a merchant and you can't. You got to use the mouse to close that window. Like it's like we're so close. Like just give us the ability to tweak a couple things, and this will be good. And then maybe that will come one day, and I'll absolutely check it out. Like I like to play these games. I play Genshin for free, play Tower Fantasy for free. It's like, like I have no problem with like stepping into a free game, knowing it's a free game and not spending any money. And then whenever I'm not having fun, say, see ya, it's like, it's not a big problem in that regards, but it'll be interesting to see. Cause like they did talk about like, hey, we learned something. Hey, we got their feedback and ideally making changes. The question is that like, this is the same thing when I look at Final Fantasy and Square Enix, right? Like having both the game, the expansions, but also even the fan fests themselves, like they would have a mistake, because we're human, we make mistakes, but I've never seen Square in terms of Final Fantasy 14 make the same mistake that they made prior. And that's something that I look forward to. Will you make mistakes? Will a company make mistakes? Will a game have a feature or a bug or something that just doesn't land the way that it was intended or have a bad impact on the community? Yeah, that's a possibility, right? How do they respond to it is actually where I usually judge people. And then how do you then make sure that that's not the same thing that happens over and over again? So, oh man, like imagine every year the same problem keeps coming back up. It's like you're not learning your lesson. You're clearly not listening. Or, oh, hey, is it a new problem that rears its head? Because sometimes systems, people, when you start breaking down systems, some systems might not reveal problems because you never actually got to the problem, because you were actually getting bottlenecked because of this actually issue. So sometimes when I've seen Square Enix like fix something, it turns out there was another issue. And that's actually like when you look at their fan fest is a great example. First, they had a massive issue with registration. Not okay, not in like that was a nightmare getting registered, getting that whole process done. They fixed it. Next time, smooth as butter. I was ready for it to be a nightmare, but they fixed it. But then nightmare was the merch shop, because all of a sudden there's no queue at registration.
Yeah,
so now there's a queue at the merch shop. So it's like, and then essentially they fixed that the next year, allowing you to pre-order all your stuff, so then you could just go walk up and pick it up. So it's like they learned and they adapted, and we haven't seen those same kind of problems rear their head, and that's a good thing. And ideally we won't see that happen again, but it's all about how do you respond to your mistakes, because you're going to make them. Like I don't have this idea that any company is going to release perfection and then maintain that. It's like, okay, like F14 is also a classic example. They messed up 1.0, and then they went and said, hey, okay, they learned, they rebuilt, and that gives me a lot of hope in business division 3. Now I saw chat talking about like they don't have a lot of trust in Square Enix. but they trust Business Division 3. And I'm with you right there. Like they're doing those NFTs. Like Square Enix is like Yoshi P's like, we're not doing this. Shut up, CEO. Please stop talking. Everybody's like, are they ruining 14? And then Yoshi P's like, we're not gonna do this. And then Square Enix is like, hell yeah, we're going forward in every way possible.
That's the same thing that it is to me. Like whenever I talk about 14, whenever I reference a team, I don't really reference Square Enix. I always see people talk about Square Enix this, Square Enix that. And it's like, no, when I talk about 14, I talk about Creative Business Unit 3, okay? Yeah. Square Enix does a lot of nasty stuff. Very much like Capcom. I never really generalize and talk about the entirety of Capcom because they've also done some pretty shady stuff on some of their games. I usually talk about the Monster Hunter team, the Dragon's Dogma team, the teams that make the games that I care about. Those teams I trust.
Absolutely. All right, Rory, where can people find you, and where can they find our upcoming collab on your place?
So I have mostly 2 channels on YouTube. I'm also on Twitch, but you can just basically look for Rurikhan and you'll find me almost anywhere. Our video is going to be on Rurikhan Unleashed, which is my second MMO dedicated channel. And yeah, that's pretty much it. You just look up Rurikhan. I'm easy to find.
And also, if you're listening to this, and wherever you get your podcasts, or even here on YouTube, he is tagged, so that way you can just follow the tag easily over to his main channel. And that's usually when people ask me, it's like, just start with Ginger Prime, and you'll find what you want, and you can subscribe to the things that you want, and you don't have to subscribe to everything I'm doing because I'm insane. But it's a fun kind of insanity that we like talking about video games. It's just so much
good
fun. Good times. Anyway, guys, we're gonna wrap up this live show. It will redirect you into an upcoming podcast. We got Crow, aka Crowjack, gonna be talking about MMORPGs, Final Fantasy, New World, and more. We got some more guests and more podcasts planned for you this month as well. So be sure to tune into live shows, and we'll hopefully see you in the MP3. But until then, take care. Nailed it, baby. Got another one.
Damn, dude, you have to stop doing that. Just this morning I was recording a video. It took like friggin' 20 takes or something to get this guy just like, let me just record a friggin' intro on the spot and an outro on the spot and get it down to the second at which the video stops. Bro, what the
here's the thing that I wish I could understand about my community. It's like, why are my like worst videos like the ones that y'all love just absolutely the most? Hi guys, I just woke up and oh my gosh, I can't believe that, like, y'all know Halo sucks, right? And everybody's like, he's so right. Like I literally like woke up like, all right, I'm about to go make pancakes for the kids, but I really just want to talk to you guys about it. Sorry, my voice sucks right now. Everybody's like, I love this bearded guy who can't shave evenly his beard, and subs and likes all over, and it's like, oh my gosh, man, like, don't tell me, like, this is the worst. Like, and I'm like, all right, guys, I'm gonna work on this video. I've got this script. I think I'm making some really good points. I'm bringing in counterpoints, and everybody's like, F this guy. I'm not watching this bull crap. And I'm like, I really want to bring back State of the Game. That's my scripted, like really deep dive into either like one particular subject, trying to look at it from in. I think I know how to do it. I've been working on a script. There's a guy. Do you follow any comics? Any comic YouTubers?
I mean,
like comic books
not
and
really.
Stuff. So Comic Story, and obviously Benny, good friend of the channel, him. But then I found this guy named Owen Likes Comics, or Owen loves comics, and his structures to his essays, I think, are genius. And so I'm going to see if I can't take it. I'm going to steal his structure, and I'll well, not like he's talking comics, but it's like how he structures it, talking about, okay, here's the situation, but then he breaks up a video in 3 parts. How did we get here? What's the current situation? And what's happening next, or whatever. So he kind of breaks up the stories of the comic, and I was like, this is such a beautiful way of doing a narration. I was like, I should structure my videos in that same fashion. So shout out to Owen Loves Comics. If you guys aren't following him and you want some really cool, like, him and Comic Storian are my two comic guys that I get all my breakdowns from. So I love that. Content, not content thief, style, like drawing inspiration from. I was like, yeah. Yes. Anyway, guys, I'm here in broadcast. It's going to spin itself out. So I'll just wave it off, and then I'll see you hopefully guys in the next show. Till then, take care.
Bye.